First up, Labour is planning to eventually borrow £28 billion a year for their Green Prosperity Plan. However, the plan drawn up by Sir Keir Starmer and Ed Miliband hasn't gone down too well. Frontbenchers and energy executives are now questioning if ambitious plans for clean power by 2030 are even possible. So have Sir Keir Starmer's green plans gone up in smoke? Joining me now is the co-founder of Climate Debate UK, Ben Pyle. Ben, it seems that as every day goes by, Keir Starmer rows back from his green project.
Yeah, it's a very silly idea in the first place, and we've got 20 years of experience to show us that this is a very silly project indeed. 20 years ago, since then, we've been promised green industrial revolutions, green jobs, green growth, and things of that kind. But actually, all we've seen for it is an immense subsidy bill. Subsidies now under the scheme that the last Labour government introduced in their infinite wisdom are now reaching £7 billion per year, and the subsidy regime that followed it is costing us £250 million a month. I think that works at about £3 billion pounds a year. So when we look at Keir Starmer's plans and the plans to spend £28 billion a year, this is just going to multiply because they want to spend they want to build 4 times as many offshore wind turbines as we already have, 2 times as many onshore wind farms as we have, and 3 times as much solar PV as we have. Now, if the 28 billion is a very good round number to work out what that's going to mean to us all. So on top of all of that, which is probably getting on for 28 billion a year itself, there's about 28 million homes. That's going to be an extra £1,000 on top of your bills, one way or another, on top of all the amount that we're already paying. So all of the claims that there was going to be green growth, green jobs, and the rest of it, all turn out to have been nonsense. It's arithmetically impossible for projects of this nature, for political agendas of this nature, to reduce bills for the consumer or to make life any better for any one of those 28 million homes. It's obviously completely a dead duck. So I hope.
Go on, Ben. What's your hope?
I hope that the Labour Party are finally doing the numbers on this, like many people have been doing. Many organisations and individuals have been saying to politicians for the last 20 years, this is not going to work. So I hope that those numbers are at last sinking in to Westminster.
Indeed. Now, Ben, just briefly, doesn't Keir Starmer have a point that we've got to wean ourselves off fossil fuels? We might as well do it sooner rather than later. Without a bold timetable, such as clean power by 2030, it'll never happen.
Well, it probably won't ever happen with 2030. 2030 is a very remarkable target. Even if we wanted to do it, even if we all agreed that it needed to be done, it's unlikely that the hardware can be delivered in that time. I mean, it's not like Amazon or it's not like B&Q. You can't just go and go online and order some wind turbines. These things have lead-in times of the best part of a decade. And then there might not even be enough copper on the global market to install all the wires that we want in that time. And the National Grid has made it quite clear, on top of the 28 billion a year, we're going to have to spend between now and 2050 350 billion, that's probably 14 billion pounds a year, just upgrading the wires, just making it possible for wind farms to be able to plug in and to the grid, and so that small towns and villages are able to accommodate the electrification of everything, the EVs that are going to be put on the grid, the electric heating that's going to be put on the grid, the heat pumps and so on, and so that's going to leave households paying more.
Okay. Well, Ben, do stay with us. Let me bring in my top pundits, TV News legend John Sargent, also former Labour Special Advisor Paul Richards, and journalist and broadcaster Linda Jubilee. John, do you think that Keir Starmer is politically exposed as a result of his green revolution? It does seem like he's rowing back on many of the pledges.
Yes, I think he is. I think they've really been surprised, about how much people are prepared to accept that climate change is happening and that human beings are playing a large part in making it worse. So that's a very big change politically. And I think the politicians, in a way, are in a hurry to say, we've got a plan to answer that point. And I think he's making a mistake, because all the variables, as Ben has been talking about, are very complicated. What's happening about electric cars, what's happening about this, what's happening about the grid, what's happening about wind farms, how long does it take to do this? And so I think what people would like to see is a determination, certainly, but not just throwing out big figures in order to impress people. It's not that kind of problem. It's a thing you have to work your way through, and it's like a war. You've gone on for year after year after year fighting climate change.
Paul Richards, Keir Starmer's goals are very laudable, aren't they? The issue is the country can't afford it and the technology isn't there yet.
But you've presented it, and Ben presented it, as purely in terms of a cost. And it's not a cost, it's an investment. And some of these things we're talking about, like wind turbines, they create brilliant new jobs in high-tech engineering. Things like carbon capture will create jobs. They'll create jobs in manufacturing that's been deindustrialised in parts of the north and Wales and Scotland. We'll need brickies and chippies and electricians to do all of this stuff. And so you have to think of it in terms of an investment. And look what Biden's doing in the States with the Inflation Reduction Act. You know, trillions of dollars going into creating jobs, new businesses, new opportunities, not only fixing the climate change issue, which we need to do desperately, but also building growth into the economy. After flatlining for 10 years, Starmer's saying, let's get the economy growing again. So this is a virtuous circle of investment and growth that will make us a world leader. Now, why should we be unafraid of that? Let's have a bit of ambition, Mark, for heaven's sake.
Linda, a bit of ambition, you're nodding your head?
Absolutely. I mean, you can't actually have momentum in an economy without ambition. We need to have ambition, and it's not often I find myself agreeing with Ed Miliband, but when he says, I'm sick of hearing people say everything's impossible, I am inclined to agree with him. Now, Tom Glover, the UK chair for RWE, he's asked, what about this, will it work? He says, do I think it's probable? No. Do I think it's technically possible? Yes. Now, in business, you have targets and you have stretch targets, and that's ambition. Now, I understand why Keir Starmer probably is rowing back a little bit, because we're getting closer and closer to an election, and people get frightened of big numbers, and they get frightened of complicated situations. But actually, I think the number's going to be bigger than 28 billion.
OK.
I think what people want, though, to see is practical. The idea that you just think up plans and you change them and you think up more plans. What people are really interested in is, can you do this and how will you do it and will it work? And that feeling, well, you've got to get the feeling of that the government is competent, knows what it's doing. Well, frankly, that's the bit that most people are thinking, oh, no, not this lot are just thinking up on bits of paper.
OK.
They're drawing up plans.
All right, well, Ben Pyle, the clock's against us, but briefly, if you can, your final thoughts on this.
Well, increasing the cost of energy, which is what this project is bound to do, what the £28 billion a year is bound to do, it cannot create growth. It's arithmetically the opposite of growth, because all of those small businesses and medium and large businesses will simply not be able to afford the costs of that energy. And those industries, where they are industries, they will go overseas. That's the experience of, for example, British Steel. And a number of other sectors. So in order to have growth, you have to produce more for less. When you start charging people more money for the same thing, they're not going to be able to employ people. They're not going to expand the services that they offer. They're not going. It's the opposite of investment. I can't put it any more simply than that.
OK, well, look, check out Ben Pyle's fascinating feed, which is on Twitter, on X. And briefly, Ben, how do people get hold of your Substack, which is your regular articles about climate change? How can people sign up for your Substack?
Well, yes, it's a Substack. It's net zero. Sorry, I'll start again. It's the netzeroscandal.substack.com.
There you go, the Net Zero Scandal. Check it out. Ben Pyle, catch up soon. Coming up next, we've got a very, very busy few.